We are at the event for the Pacific Media Workers Guild in Oakland, California.
That's right. California Labor Federation, where are you?
Woo!
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a long, long campaign, and I'm going to turn it over real quick because it's important that you hear from our folks. Right now is a critical moment, not only for journalism, but for union journalism. And we're in the middle of negotiations, and they're real tough with this company, Digital First Media. Digital First Media is owned by a hedge fund called Alden Global Capital. Look at your signs right now. The hashtag's Alden Exposed. That's what we're here to do today, is to expose this company for the looting that they're doing of our local papers. So I'm going to turn it over now to Thomas Peel with the East Bay Times.
Yay, Tom!
Tom Peel, hero for SB 1421.
Thank you. I don't think I need this.
Yes, you
Use
do.
it.
We want to
Use
hear
it, use it.
Come on, Tom.
Well, I got to manage some papers here, so I'm going to try to not use it but talk loud, okay? Thank you all for being here today and standing with us. I worked for newspapers for 36 years. And if there's one thing that I think I've learned, it's that this saying about journalism is a deep truth. Love the work, hate the business. Those 6 words epitomize why members of our 3 units are here today. We indeed love journalism. And we take the responsibility that the Constitution mandates of us with solemn resolve. Power, service, telling the truth. And we hate the business under which we suffer, specifically the oppressive and secretive and jackbooted overlord Alden Global Capital that owns our newspapers, or what in the murky alphabet soup they are calling today DFM, Media News. They switch the name around when we criticize them. We're here because when it comes to Alden, as the great civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer once said, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired of the way that this company treats its employees.
That's right.
10 years ago, shortly before Alden took over our company, our pay was cut up to 10% for some of us because of the impact of the Great Recession. Accept it, we were told. You still have a job. Well, a decade later, as the stock market soars to record highs, thanks to its president, Keith Freeman, who calls himself Keith Dog to his friends, we've received one paltry raise in those 10 years. We've long lost company contribution to retirement, and we suffer with low-grade, high-deductible health insurance, the kind that the American Academy of Pediatrics tells parents not to have because it disincentivizes the seeking of medical care because of the costs and puts children at risk. That's what our company gives us. We have journalists living in garages, living with their parents, working 2 or 3 extra jobs to make ends meet. Imagine having low, having low stagnant pay in this market of all places. I think our plight can be best summed up this way. For journalists living in the Bay Area, the rent is too damn high and the pay is too damn low. Yet, as Michael alluded to, in our ongoing contract talks, We are told by Heath Dog Freeman's toadies that raises are out of the question. This is from a company that enjoys industry-leading profits. In 2017, it made $41 million from its Bay Area papers alone. But we don't get raises because Alden Global Capital's board doesn't give a rat's behind. Should have said ass.
Should have said ass.
Should have said ass. Rat's ass.
Just did.
About who does the work. They spit in our faces and they tell us that it's only raining. We can't have raises because in the secret world of private equity, the land of the 1%, it's a mortal sin to take a few points less profit to pay people a living wage. The impact is immense. Digital First Media News is the largest newspaper company in California with 30 daily newspapers up and down the state. Only 3 of those newspapers are unionized. At only 3 of those newspapers can journalists stand up and speak out like we're doing today. Conditions at those other 27 papers are hideous. Some of them have 1 reporter. Some of them have no staff photographers. That is how little Alden Global thinks of and cares about the communities that those newspapers serve. Alden Global is a so-called vulture hedge fund. All it can do is destroy things and pick the bones. Anyone who's ever kicked over a sandcastle at a beach knows how much easier it is to destroy something than it is to build something. All Alden Global does is destroy newspapers. Destroys newspapers. The baseball legend Casey Stengel once said that every baseball team needed a catcher so they wouldn't have a lot of passed balls. Well, every city deserves a newspaper and needs a newspaper. Because without a newspaper, the crooks and the corruption they create will win. Studies have shown that in the news deserts in this country, because Alden is not alone in what it does in gutting newspapers, it's just better at it than anybody else. Taxes are higher, corruption is more rampant, people are all the more uninformed. The founders knew what they were doing when they made the press free, turning it on the government and the powerful. There is no other mechanism that is as effective as the free press in checking tyranny. But all it does with its newspapers is slash them to appease their greedy Cayman Island shareholders. Our newspapers bleed good people who simply can't afford to live in the Bay Area with the low pay and the crappy benefits. The rest of us hang on, often questioning ourselves, why? I know I ask myself why a lot. Why work for a company that frankly treats us like crap? We do it despite this because we know how valuable the work is to our fellow citizens. We find strength and meaning and purpose in that work. We believe in its public service. We love the work. We hate the business. but we also demand to be treated fairly and to be fairly compensated and to be given retirement benefits and to stop decent health care and to stop being fleeced and beaten down by some of the worst and slimiest people and business practices that society has to offer. We will not cease in these demands, just as we will not cease in our attempts to serve the public with our work. But we need your help. Please sign the petitions that are being circulated. Tell Alden's board to compensate us fairly, to treat us like human beings, to let us do the vital work of being democracy's watchdog while not having to constantly watch for wolves at our own door. Tell Heath Dog Freeman to pay us now. Pay us now.
Pay us now!
Thank you.
I'm Julie Reynolds, and I worked at the Monterey Herald for 10 years. And I'm really happy to see my Herald colleagues have come all the way up here to the Bay Area to send this message that's so important for people to hear. For the past 3.5 years, I've been investigating Alden Global Capital, the New York hedge fund that's been deliberately ransacking your community newspaper. And what I learned is that Alden's president, Heath Freeman, is siphoning hundreds of millions of dollars from the digital first media news newspaper chain. They've been withdrawing these millions as if they're a personal ATM and investing money that came from your community into unrelated and very questionable businesses around the world. 2 of these investments, the Fred's Pharmacy chain and Payless shoe stores, were shut down this year under Alden's watch. 22,000 workers in those 2 chains lost their livelihood this year because of Alden's corporate irresponsibility. Many of the overseas businesses that Alden invested in have been investigated for corruption and bribery in Brazil, for fraud in Angola. And another Alden investment, an energy company with ties to Vladimir Putin, has been indicted for criminal environmental violations in Russia. But just this past week, I learned that Alden has invested almost $2 million in the parent company of Smith & Wesson Firearms. We don't know yet if those $2 million came out of our newspapers, but we do know that money could have been used to keep a team of reporters on the beat covering your city and your neighborhood. We do know that the hundreds of millions that Alden has brazenly pillaged from newspapers all across California could have been reinvested in these brave journalists here who are still producing award-winning work despite working in abysmal conditions. But in fact, Alden wants to increase its profits so much that it's now designing its Bay Area weeklies not in California, but in the Philippines, where it's paying pennies on the dollars. And now with all this cost cutting, maybe you'd think Alden newspapers must be teetering on the brink of ruin. But the fact is, Alden-owned papers are among the most profitable in the industry. Our California papers bring in twice the profit percentage as highly successful newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post. These alarming business decisions are choices. Alden has chosen to extract as much money as it can from the Mercury News, the East Bay Times, the Monterey Herald, and scores of other papers around our state. It has chosen to cut wages and benefits for its workers, and it has chosen to lay off journalists at what we now know is more than 3 times the national rate at other news chains. These numbers are truly staggering. Alden's newsrooms have diminished by almost 3/4 in just 7 years since it took over digital first media. But our California news workers are fighting back, and they're even bringing their story to Washington. Today, the House Financial Services Committee is holding a hearing called America for Sale, an examination of the practices of private funds. And the News Guild Union has submitted testimony about Alden to this committee. It is time for us to stand up to the hedge funds and time to demand that they get out of journalism. Democracy, your community's right to information, is not a line item on a spreadsheet. It is time for civic-minded local owners to step up. It's time to find owners who understand that news gathering is essential to democracy, that it's a community and social trust. It's not a treasure chest to be pillaged and trampled. Today we're telling Alden Global Capital to act responsibly or get out of the news business.
Yeah.
Former Bay Area News Group and a former Bay Area News Group reporter. I'm here today because Assemblywoman Bucky Wicks has penned a letter of support that will be submitted to the Guild on behalf of the journalists that cover her community so tirelessly. I'm going to read that letter now. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I'm writing to voice my support for our local reporters and their demands for living wages and fair benefits. Public accountability and the health of our democracy depend on these local journalists. Without them, we wouldn't know which schools are underperforming, which institutions are corrupt, or when our leaders aren't acting in the best interests of their constituents. These journalists serve their communities both by holding their government accountable and by elevating the voices, concerns, and stories of local people. They shine a light on issues that need to be addressed at the policy level and keep the faces of those impacted front and center. Their work, Pulitzer-winning and otherwise, has a meaningful impact on legislation and how it takes shape. They produce coverage from which we cannot turn away, and it's work that doesn't go unnoticed in Sacramento. Every dollar paid to local journalists produce hundreds of dollars in public benefit. They make our government work better, our communities more sustainable. It's a profound public service, one that our communities can't afford to be without. It's time for Media News Group to recognize this and pay their reporters the wages and benefits they deserve. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Salonga. I'm a criminal justice reporter with the Mercury News, and I am a East San Jose kid, born and raised, grew up reading the Mercury News, and all I ever wanted to do my whole life was be a reporter at the Mercury News. And I'll tell you, when I first got out of college and grad school, I tried to apply for a job at the Mercury News, and I was told, you're too green, you're too young, go get a couple jobs under your belt and come back when you have more experience. Because the Mercury News was a destination paper in the United States. It attracted reporters from all over the country. And so I did that. I worked in Salinas, and then I joined the Bay Area News Group through the Contra Costa Times and Oakland Tribune. And eventually I got to my destination. And I am fortunate to say that I am, as modest as it sounds, I am working my dream job, being a reporter at the Mercury News for my hometown paper. But now, over the years, and it's accelerated since Alden Global Capital took over the company, it's now less a destination and more of a departure point for journalists trying to make a living in journalism and often elsewhere. And when they leave, we're usually not replacing them. So that means more work for the people who are still here and digging in. So besides the institutional memory we're losing, we're struggling to rebuild it because we're having trouble retaining and attracting younger reporters who don't necessarily see a future in journalism, despite knowing how essential it is to our society and our democracy. So with the company putting in all these new initiatives to attract and retain subscribers and giving us more work to do in the process, they should put in as much, if not more, work in attracting and retaining the people producing the essential journalism that are generating those profits. It would take just a small fraction of those profits to show that they value our work. It is worth it.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Ben Enos. I'm also a former writer with the Contra Costa Times, and I'm here to read a statement on behalf of Congressman Mark DeSaulnier. Local journalism has been a critical component of our society since the founding days of the United States. Dedicated men and women, like many of you here today, have faithfully written the first draft of our history, holding the powerful accountable and keeping the people of our nation informed with rigorously researched and fact-checked journalism. Sadly, today companies like Digital First Media and its parent company, Alden Financial, are taking advantage of our nation's newsrooms. Instead of investing in talented, experienced staff and expanding access to local news coverage, Alden and companies like it are squeezing profits out of the industry with little concern for the impacts that these cuts have on the journalists who lose their jobs and the communities that are left without quality journalism. We are lucky to live in an area with so many talented, award-winning journalists. Alden has apparently taken the position that the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism that comes out of our local newsrooms doesn't require investment. Quality journalism is not free, and you all deserve better. Alden has made a $41 million profit off East Bay newspapers in 2017, and instead of using that money where it was earned and investing in who helped them earn it, instead it diverts money to other business interests, reduces the size of newsrooms, and forces you to make the decision between providing the same coverage with less resources or reducing coverage. This is not how you reward profit-making, award-winning journalism. You work every day to keep us informed and to provide us with quality information about the communities in which we live and work. You deserve a fair contract that recognizes your contributions to our society and takes into account the value of your work. I applaud you for the dedicated work you do every day. Without you, our nation would be less informed and our communities less engaged. I urge Digital First Media and Alden Financial to do the right thing, negotiate in good faith, and give you the fair contract you deserve. I stand with you and journalists like you across the nation who are fighting the same fight.
How y'all doing today?
Yeah.
Okay, you can win this. You got to be louder. How are we doing today? All right, that's what I like to hear. My name is Josh Richmond. I was a reporter at the Bay Area News Group for almost 19 years. So I'm very happy to be back among my former colleagues, my former brothers and sisters in the union today. And I'm especially proud to be here in my current capacity as Communications Director and Senior Advisor to Congressman Eric Swalwell. Congressman Swalwell wishes he could be here himself, but he has some business to conduct in Washington today. So he sent me in his stead to read this letter. This letter is addressed to Michael Applegate, Executive Officer of the Pacific Media Workers Guild. Dear Mr. Applegate, I write in support of East Bay Times and Mercury News employees' demand for living wages and fair benefits. To paraphrase Chicago journalist and humorist Finley Peter Dunn back in 1902, the job of the newspaper is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. He wrote this satirically, but it really is true. News media can give voice to the voiceless, shine a light on things that the powerful would rather do and keep in the dark, and make ours a fairer, freer republic. Yet here, it appears the newspaper is afflicted by the comfortable, a corporate ownership that has stripped away these newspapers' assets and siphoned away profits to feed unrelated business ventures while letting local news gathering and the employees who conduct it wither on the vine. In one of the nation's most expensive places to live, Pulitzer-winning work that these journalists have done in recent years seems to be despite their employers' unfortunate fiscal policies. We are at a moment in American history in which journalists are labeled enemies of the people and a stain on America. The international journalism advocacy group Reporters Without Borders last year dropped the United States ranking in its annual World Press Freedom Index by 2 points to number 45 overall. This year we slipped 3 more points down to 48th place. Journalism is under fire and requires support from all of us, including newspapers' corporate ownership. We must bring our society back to the ideals of openness and access, and bring our fellow citizens back to the idea that knowledge is power, knowledge is freedom. A robust, healthy press is the lifeblood of our democracy, so our democracy must nurture and protect a free press. This starts with treating journalists with the respect they deserve. In solidarity, Eric Swalwell, Member of Congress, 15th Congressional District.
afternoon. I am Richard Nee. That's Knee, just like elbow. I am California Vice President of the Guild, and I'm a member of the Guild Freelancers Unit. That unit was formed by the Guild back in 2008, and I was one of the first in. Why I did that? Because I believe in building solidarity between freelance and staff workers. We're not here to put you out of a job. We're here to support you in what you do and to work alongside you. Toward that end, we want Alden, and we want Hearst, and we want all those industry publishers out there to know that in the event of a strike or a lockout, we will join the picket lines, and we will let freelancers across the country know that crossing that picket line, be it physically or electronically or by any other means, is a bad idea. We're on your side. Your cause is a just cause, and it's the right cause. Solidarity. Solidarity!
This is my kind of rally. You guys got a stepping stool for me and everything. Liz Ortega, Executive Secretary, Treasurer of the Alameda Labor Council, representing 135,000 workers across Alameda County, here today to say, we have your back. We have your back. All across this country, workers like yourselves are standing up against corporate greed and saying enough is enough. We've seen it with teachers. We've seen it with city and county employees. We've seen it with nurses. And now we're seeing it with you, the democracy of our country. And so, on behalf of Alameda County and our workers, we're here to say, keep up the fight. We have your back. And when workers fight back, we win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. Thank you.
My name is Bob Butler. I'm a reporter in radio here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, Bob.
I've worked with people like Thomas Peel and Josh Richmond on the Chauncey Bailey Project, George Kelly. I know the value of local news, especially local newspaper news. I mean, hell, where would we get our news if it wasn't for local newspapers, right? SAG-AFTRA represents 160,000 singers and dancers and actors and 6,000 broadcasters, many of which work in local news like I do. SAG-AFTRA supports any member that wants to get better working conditions, better wages, and respect from the owners and their managers. So I'm here on behalf of SAG-AFTRA to say, we got your back. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you get a living wage. We want to see you get health care. We want to see you get retirement. It's only right. Workers need these things in order to live. It's only right. It's not fair that someone will try to take it away from you. Thank you very much.
Kelly.
George. All right, George.
Always hard to follow Bob Butler. Thank you for those words, and thank you for everyone who's gotten up today to speak, to let people know why we're out here, what brought us here to this moment, and what we will take forward with us from this place. All of us are here because we believe democracy depends on journalism. All of us are here today because we believe democracy is nothing without the people, and journalism is nothing without the people. We are gathered here today to tell the folks in the Lipstick Building in Midtown Manhattan, 3,000 miles east of here, your day is coming. We are coming for you. And when we get to you, you're going to regret it. I've spent half my life in the Bay Area, working as a reporter, working alongside some of the finest people I've ever met, learning from them every day through their examples, through their efforts, through their energy, through their organization, through their community ties, and through their willingness to persevere through conditions that would make a venture capitalist blush. That should make a venture capitalist blush. They do bleed, don't they? Are we going to find out if they bleed?
Yeah.
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 Are we going to find out if they bleed?
Yeah.
We know they are afraid of us. We've seen what they do. They change their name to try to do business as some other organization when they try to dip their toes into something like the Gannett Gatehouse merger. We've seen what they do when they set up organizations to funnel money into Mexican construction companies, when they set up businesses to try to invest in pharmacy chains and shoe companies. So we know they know fear. We're going to show them what we know. We know we can win. We've seen it in the examples of working peoples coming together. People like the California Labor Federation. People like the Guild Freelancers. People like the hundreds of unions that have stood up for themselves and worked to make better conditions for their families, for their communities, and for the region, for this country. This country is nothing without the legacy of people coming together. Democracy depends on journalism. Not just the journalism we see taking place covering the impeachment proceedings in Washington, D.C., my hometown. We know that democracy depends on journalism in San Jose and in the people who are busting their butts to try to go to city council meetings, trying to go to accident scenes, trying to go to hearings and forums and every other place that people gather together. There is power in gathering together. We know that not just because we're here, but we know it because of what we're going to do when we leave here. We will continue the campaign to save local news. We will push back against the powers of Wall Street. We will make a better way for our community to learn about ourselves. And we will pay tribute to the people who get up at 2 or 3 in the morning when they learn that people are dead at a party just 2 towns over. We will pay tribute to the people who wake up at midnight or 2 p.m. when a refinery or a plant in West County gets smoke spiraling up from it. People depend on us. People depend on us to do work. And we who know how to work will get to it. Let's get to work.
Thank you all. Can folks at the Monterey Herald, San Jose Mercury News, and East Bay Times come up here so the crowd can see your faces and the company can see your faces? Look at them.
It's hard against the sun. It's like it's all slackened. You can't take your picture.
This is local journalism. These are the people that write those articles that you read in the paper that inspire us every day.
Thank you all for being here. We'd like to get one group shot of the entire crowd before we break for questions. So if you all can come up here, we're going to have our photographer take a quick photo.
How about having everyone face this way?
so the sun is
and then
behind
the photographer can stand on that.
Have a photographer set up this year.
Yeah, let's have a photographer. Can this be stacked on the other? Yeah, of course. There. And then a little tighter.
People kind of lean down in the front.
Right here. You have another sign right here?